Two guys of Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Okay, usually it's weekend statements and questions here. We're out middle of the week right now. Our schedule with Memorial Day and Flagrant Howls yesterday kind of pushed this to middle of the week. But we still have takes, we still have statements, we still have questions here, presented in part by North American Banking Company. Gentlemen, here's a statement. North American Banking Company can give you a better banking experience. Minnesota-based since 1998, 6 locations in the Twin Cities, friendly, knowledgeable staffers who took the time to learn about myself, my family, needs. They emphasize personal relationships, cutting-edge online tools. So whether you're buying a home, tackling a renovation, financing a car, or maybe just looking for something more basic, like a new checking account, savings account, go to nabankcode.com/Mackey to learn more. That's nabankcode.com/Mackey. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Judd, you get the honors here. You get the honors.
Okay, my statement is this, and this comes from the weekend. It really comes from the week before as well. This is why I hate when the national media gets involved. That's my statement. And I'm talking about the dialogue that's surrounding the Ant-Man, or so in Stephen A. Smith's world, he's Ant-Man, and in Skip Bayless's world, he's the Can't-Man. And I'm talking about the dialogue where the wild pendulum swings about a player like Anthony Edwards get to be absolutely ridiculous. And here's what I mean. Anthony Edwards is not a problem for the Timberwolves. But there's also the faction. So there's with Stephen A, it literally is after every performance. It's either he's back on track or he let them down. It's as if he is the only player on the team. And that is, and you know, Big Perk loves him and talked about how great he was, or how he didn't have a bad game in Game 4. But then pivoted around yesterday and also talked about how he can't be the face of the league because he doesn't have a family. He's not married, and he's not a family man. Yeah, he's not a family man. Yeah. And meanwhile, then in the other corner, you've got the people who are just defending Ant and saying, you don't know what you're watching or talking about. Somewhere here, there is a conversation about his series, okay? I don't think it's too much to expect more than the Wolves have gotten at times. And yes, he is making, in Game 4, he made the right play a lot, but he also took 13 shots and fully admitted, I need to take more than 13 shots. But when the national media gets involved in high-profile events, it feels like it's either one thing or the other, and rational discussion about the expectation of what the kid or the guy should be goes out the window, and it drives me crazy because you either get Anthony Edwards is letting the Timberwolves down and he stinks, or no, he's been fine, he's been great. In this case, there's a happy medium that we can talk about. It's okay to talk about that without being on one side of the fence or the other completely.
Yeah, I feel like it's with social media existing now and compared to maybe eras past 25, 30 years ago, it's just a different way that you consume content around your favorite sports and athletes. And a lot of the shows right now, it's like who can have the most aggressive take, or who can put the final stamp on a discussion, right? And when you're talking about a 21, 22, 23-year-old young superstar in the NBA, for generations, going back to Michael Jordan, there has been essentially a ladder that you have to climb up. And Michael Jordan was one of the most pronounced examples. Individually, awesome contributor in the mid to late 80s. But as a winner and as a team, the Chicago Bulls, they kept running smack into older superstars, more formed teams, better coached teams until Phil Jackson came around. Boston, the Pistons, and then finally, like Michael Jordan, the player that everyone considers to be one of the 2 greatest players of all time. Finally, at age like 27 or 28, he breaks through and wins a championship. LeBron James was kind of the same way. He made that early trip to the finals, but he didn't get to his second conference finals until he was 24. Ant's been to conference finals twice at age 23. And then LeBron at age 27 decided, it's not going to happen for me in Cleveland. I'm literally going to manufacture a super team down in Miami to win my first championship. And they had to go and lose in the finals the first year they went with a super team. So it's like we forget and ignore the process that most top NBA players have to go through in favor of putting a stamp on a conversation. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, for example, all right? When that dude was 22 and 23 years old, you know what he was doing? Winning 24 and 22 games for the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2021 and 2022. And then he turns 24 and they flirt with 500. I think they were a play-in team a couple years ago. So even he needed until his 7th year in the league and age 26 to get to his first conference finals. He's a more seasoned, fully formed player than Anthony Edwards is. Not that it's just Shai versus Anthony Edwards, but it's a lot of nuance that people are trying to talk about in absolutes, and I think that's what you're getting here with Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, it just drives me nuts because it's like, let's just have a conversation about him. If you want to talk about the teams, that's fine. But yeah, it's absolutes, and it's a bunch of people that don't watch these teams ever until they get to the playoffs.
Well, Jason Tatum had to go through this a lot in Boston, and I think the criticism there was maybe even a little more warranted because they had some stocked, fully formed teams that maybe didn't fulfill their championship potential. But like most of Jason Tatum, if you get away from the commentary, has been one of the best players of this generation. But the way he's talked about, it's like, well, he should have 2 more championships. He should have MVP over here, and he's not living up to. And part of the problem is when you become that good that early, when it starts to click when you're like 21, 22, 23 years old. Mm-hmm. And then you come short of winning championships, or you come up short in a playoff series against an older, more seasoned veteran player and team. Instead of it being a celebration of, wow, how many 22 and 23-year-olds have even taken a team to this point? LeBron James, even 20 years ago, how many 22-year-olds take that roster to the NBA Finals? Yeah, right. But he got swept in the finals, and Jordan never got swept in the finals. Yeah, because Jordan wasn't able to carry bad Bulls teams. Like he had to have Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, and a bunch of help. And I still think he's the greatest player of all time. But we just like, these are nuanced discussions, and we're trying to talk about them in absolutes. Though,
the defenders come along and say, you don't know basketball. If you rip a guy, you don't know it. And it's like, okay, back off yourself. Like, I don't need you. Like, there is no conversation that should revere a guy just for the sake of that. Like, he plays on a team. He's very important. Yeah, he's not perfect. Let's talk about that. But 1, he doesn't suck. And 2, he's not perfect.
Well, we talked about this on Flagrant Halls yesterday. The reality of the Anthony Edwards conversation is twofold. 1, he is absolutely criticizable for some of the holes in his game right now compared to, like, if you're comparing him to the teams that he's facing in the Western Conference Finals, Luka and Kyrie last year and SGA this year and the teams around them, he needs to be better in the mid-range. He needs to be a better ball handler. He probably needs to be in a little better condition just in terms of what it takes to play 40 minutes at your peak and all those things. And those are things that he's better at now than he was 2 years ago, and he learned from last year. So those are, like, you can poke holes in those things. And also, there aren't many 22 and 23-year-olds in the history of the NBA that didn't have Shaquille O'Neal as a primary teammate that take a team as far as he has the last 2 seasons. And he's ahead of schedule.
And this is also why Tim Connelly has turned into a mad roster scientist. Like, he's trying to surround him with the right guys.
Yeah. Okay, I have a piggyback off this. A couple people emailed yesterday the feedback tab, Score North app, and tweeted at me because I was making a point that, and I just did here in the first part of this episode, that it's Anthony Edwards getting this far at this age 22, age 23. And other people have said, well, wait a second, though. you have to look at it in terms of number of years in the league versus how old you are. Steph Curry only needed 5 years to get to his first championship and MVP. He was 26, but he entered the league at age 21. So I guess my question to you guys is it more fair to gauge where a player is at in the timeline of success based on their age or based on the number of years in the professional sport that they're playing? I would argue that I know it was Davidson. It wasn't exactly like high-level Big Ten or SEC competition, right? But Steph Curry was playing like huge NCAA tournament games as one of the best scorers in college basketball, playing like really highly competitive college basketball for 2 or 3 years, and then he jumps into the NBA. Anthony Edwards played in the NBA for 2 of those years that Steph was playing at Davidson. But I think age is a better barometer than how many years you've been in the league. That's my opinion.
I think that's right. Yeah, it's a little different for other sports, like, right? Because like Joe Burrow enters the league like a little older now. You see other quarterbacks that can enter the league because of the red shirts and those COVID years. Like it's a little different. But in this instance, and especially like baseball players too, right? Like you're still seeing some guys that are sub 21, 21, 22 years old that are coming up and dominating where, you know, it took Michael Kadire till his age 27, 28 season to really figure out major league pitching. So yeah, I think the age thing, I see both sides of it, but what Ant's been able to do in the 5 years is incredible.
Speaking of a potentially nuanced conversation, this is one. It's my opinion that Ant's maturity, like the technicals, cannot be dismissed as he's young because he's been playing. He knows what's going to get him in trouble. Like it's not new. Mm-hmm. But as far as the championships go, I think that's a lot more. I think that's a different discussion too, because it's also based on your team. It's also based on who's around you. And the Wolves are good, but I mean, is this Wolves roster as good as that Golden State roster was at the time that Steph started to fire and win championships? That would be my question. There are things Ant does maturity-wise, though, that I do think he's 23, but he's been around long enough, and he's essentially the captain of this team that you can't just blame on age based on his basketball maturity, which should be higher often than it is.
Look at that. Look at that nuance right there, where you can poke holes in someone's shortcomings and not be a hater.
Well, yeah.
And you can acknowledge those holes and shortcomings while also saying on a macro level, this dude is absolutely on the right track and is one of the 5 or 10 best players in the NBA. Like, it bothers me just as much on the flip side when, like the other night, I tweeted about the Karl Anthony Towns experience, trademark, all capital letters. And the experience is a wide variance of 20-point fourth quarters and also train wreck fouls and stray voltage moments and things like that, right? That is the truth. The Karl Anthony Towns through his career has been an experience, high and low. Yeah. Well, you're a hater. If you point out the facts about someone's career, if they're negative, you're a hater. This idea that you have to either blindly hate someone or blindly follow someone when 90% of the reality is in the middle ground, gray area with nuance.
And if you want the team to win,
an amazing phenomenon.
But if you like your team, okay, which I totally get, that doesn't mean you should ever just be wedded to a player too, right? Like I've decided, like there are people who take the star of their team and elevate them above the team itself. And they might not win championships. And it's like, well, but I love this guy. It's like, well, then you don't really care that much about the team now.
Ride or die with no... Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Sure. So, anyway. Yeah. Good, Dex.
I'll spin you a curveball here. I'll go to the Twins and say, I think this is the best 1-2-3 Twins starting rotation of my lifetime. 1-2-3. Not in terms of the best pitcher, because Johan was certainly the best pitcher.
Wow,
that's
Lariano
loaded,
was great as a supplemental bat, which is actually even better than Johan in that run. But they had Boof Bonzer as their third. I'm saying 1-2-3, depth-wise. This is the best 1-2-3 they have had in my life. I was born right after 91. I was born in December of 92. I really think I trust these guys explicitly in any playoff game. I really do. Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Bailey Ober. Set it and forget it, as Plouffe said a couple weeks ago. I'm trying to look back, and I know Johan was certainly the Cy Young and the best pitcher, and Liriano had that peak in 06 and also still had some good seasons mixed in around that. Look at 1, 2, 3. What rivals this year's 1, 2, 3 from Pablo, Joe, and Bailey? I don't think there's a close second.
Well, I would take the 2006 rotation for sure and put it under a spotlight, because it wasn't Boof Bonser that was the number 3 starter. It was actually Brad Radke, and it was the last year of Radke's career. But he did have an above average ERA. He was an above average starting pitcher. He had an above average ERA plus. So he was like pretty good. He had a shoulder issue that he was grinding through. But when Johan and Francisco Liriano were both healthy for like 4 months or whatever it was that year, and Radke as like an above average number 3 starter, I would still take those 3 because of how top heavy it was. But it's in the conversation. Like, this current rotation doesn't have anyone as good as Johan or 06 Liriano, but all 3 of those guys are better than 2006 Brad Radke was toward the end of his career. So it's up there. I'd be curious what Judd's perspective is looking back. They had some other decent ones, like, Liriano after the surgery with Pavano and Scott Baker were pretty good, but
solid.
But that was like post-surgery Liriano.
I think this trio has an opportunity to be that. Let me give you. So I'll give you a just like, because the '90s were a dark period. Like for
but there's some Bob Tewksbury disrespect.
You didn't miss anything. You didn't miss anything. There's some, but I will give you a pretty good trio of starters in the year that you were born, actually. 92. Smiley, Tapani, Erickson. But yeah, you're right. The 90s. I'm trying to think through here. How often have the Twins been 3 deep? In that case, Smiley and Tapani both won 16 games. Erickson won 13. But yeah, I could see it. I could definitely see it. I mean, if they can win some playoff games, I think you're probably right. They've built up a rotation. Those first 3. Now it's, to go back to our discussion with Plouffe, it's interesting because I don't think there's one that stands out, like in the case of Santana. Johan was just, okay, he's special. I don't know that there's one who's special here, but I do think that you have 3 potential. Back in the day, we called them horses. They're not horses now, right? Because you don't go out there and sling it for 9. But I feel like, Bailey Ober is an old school horse, boys. You look at that build, that's a horse.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of build, he's an old school horse, but there is none of those exist where they go 8 2/3 and then begrudgingly hand the ball over once. But if I
was to put this trio in 1994, Ober would be, I think, near the top of the American League in complete games.
Yeah,
I think Pablo would get pissed off being pulled out. I think Joe would too, but I don't think that they would be complete game type of guy. Probably.
You know what's interesting is Joe, and we saw it yesterday in the start. He's easily the most animated pitcher they have on the mound. Yeah, and I love it. I don't. That's not a slight at Joe. And he also like openly talks about when he doesn't get the call, like he does. Like, okay, all right, that's not a strike, huh? Or if you ask him about a close pitch, and I always love this in postgame, he goes, "Oh, you mean the strike when it was called a ball?" He's pretty tongue in cheeky about that stuff. But yeah, 1, 2, 3, I really like it.
Another factor that has to be considered is, I mean, to the horse aspect. There's been some years where they've got some decent pitchers here and there, but like, are you able to pitch 30 starts or more? I think if at the end of the year these guys are all healthy for the most part, I know Lopez missed like a start, but if at the end of the year they're giving you 180 plus innings, maybe a guy gets to 200, which is hard in today's age, and they're out there. That was the Liriano knock is. Yeah, he was out there, but he only made like 12 starts in 2006. He came out of the bullpen for the first 2 months. Then he was awesome as a starter from like June until August, and then he blows his elbow out. So durability does factor in.
Bob Tewksbury.
That's right. The Mike Lincoln slander will not stand.
The 90s retreads that came through the
Mike
Metrodome.
Morgan.
Yep. Oh, I loved Mike Morgan. He was great with the Cubs.
Was he great with the Cubs?
Well, he was very solid.
He played for the Cubs.
Not great. He was very solid. Because I think he was behind Mad Dog, if I'm not mistaken.
Let's look at Mike Morgan here.
He was solid for the Cubs.
Great
is probably.
You might be right. This is before.
I think he was solid. I think that's a fair thing. But I mean, he was an upper echelon 1990s National League starter for the Cubs.
He also had.
But he pitched
2 different stints with the Cubs too. Yeah, he actually. You know what? I'll give you this.
He's a very solid pitcher.
In 1992, Mike Morgan with the Cubs was awesome. He had a 2.55 ERA. It's so funny, the strikeout rates back in the day. No one struck anyone out. It's like when Roger Clemens and Randy Johnson and Pedro Martinez would come along. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And Nolan Ryan.
Yep.
But most pitchers, like Mike Morgan, was one of the best pitchers in the National League in 1992. And he struck out 4.5 batters per 9 innings. He pitched 240 innings and only had 120 strikeouts.
You worked around the plate. You tried to get guys to
well, you could throw a pitch 5 inches outside, and the hitter would have to swing at it, and it'd be weak contact. Yeah. I have a how would you handle this?
I can't wait for this
airport scenario for you guys here. Let's first stop off at the Meadows at Mystic and book a tee time.
That's right. It's a beautiful heading up this weekend. Heck, next week it's 80. I personally love to golf in the sun and the heat. I know some people prefer that 60 to 70 degree range. I like to sweat. If I'm going to be shooting 110, let me sweat it out, okay? Literally and figuratively. Golfthemeadows.com to book that next tee time. If you're coming up for a Vikings game maybe later this year, or in general, if you just want to get out, just a short drive out of the metro on 169, go to golfthemeadows.com to book that tee time.
Also, Legit Pizza. A couple nights ago, I had the post-game sort of mourning the Timberwolves loss. Legit Pizza. It was phenomenal. I was like, I'm going to eat half this. And then one thing led to another. And, where'd the Legit Pizza go? It's gone because it's incredible. In my opinion, it's the best frozen pizza on the market right now. Pep's Legit Pizza. You can find them inside grocery store freezer sections around the Twin Cities. And you can have that authentic at-home pizza parlor experience. I know Judd's got a bolt here in like 5 minutes, so I'll throw this out quickly. I feel like every time we travel, it's mostly Declan and I. Judd doesn't go to airports anymore. It's been a minute.
I try to avoid them.
But I feel like there's always something like Larry David that happens to us. And sure enough, so we're coming back from our trip up the Northeast New England. We flew into Boston up to Maine, and then we wound up going back to Boston for a couple days and caught a Red Sox game. So we're at Logan Airport in Boston on the way home.
Oh, yeah.
And we're in the security line. So we get through, and it's one of those with the big bins, where it's like 3 different people, and you got the big bins. You put everything in a bin. So my wife puts her stuff in a couple of bins, and she walks through the metal detector, and you're waiting for your stuff to come back out through the other side. And she notices she put her shoes, and her shoes had like some bright lime green coloring on them. And she notices that as the bin is coming through with which should have been both of her shoes, only one of her shoes was in the bin. So she's kind of taking the stuff out and, trying to see like, where the hell is my other shoe? So as she's kind of sorting through, she looks up and there was a bin behind the bin. So she had the 2 bins and then the other person had a bin coming through. And you know how sometimes with like the little like rubber drapes that kind of drop down, stuff can get knocked out of a bin into somebody else's bin. So one of her shoes gets knocked out of her bin into someone else's bin. And she's kind of realizing this. And, the woman whose bin it was grabs the shoe, looks at it, realizes it's not her shoe because it's my wife's shoe. And instead of like turning around and asking whose shoe it is, she throws it to the right. So like it's like a conveyor belt and the bins are going into a conveyor belt. She throws it into where the bins are going into the hole, like underneath the TSA station, and throws the shoe inside I wish I had a word to describe it, but you know what I'm talking about? Like the bins are going to their death into this hole the conveyor belt. And she throws the shoe into that hole area. Oh. Quick thinking and twitch athletic ability. My wife sees it happening, reaches in before the shoe can go into the abyss and grabs her shoe out of it. And avoids, I don't know what happened. Like those bins, I don't know where they go. Eventually somebody grabs them and they put them back. I don't know if you put a shoe in there, what happens.
Right.
So my question to you guys is, how would you have handled the situation? A, if someone else's shoe wound up in your bin, but maybe more importantly, B, if someone tried to throw your shoe into the conveyor belt hole.
I would have blown a gasket. Number one, other lady. Then this is my number one. I was just talking to my wife yesterday about this. Airports are the one place, might be the only place, we really got to follow a specific guideline of rules. And if you want to be a little bit of a rule breaker in your other life, that's fine. This is like the 25, 30-minute period when you're going through security where you gotta abide to being a good person. Throwing something, especially a shoe, at an airport is one of the dumbest things I'm shocked. I thought you were going to say when she had the shoe that was like, whose shoe is this? And then TSA starts freaking out that it's a shoe bomb. Like, that's where I thought this was going. But I certainly, if there was a shoe in my bin, I would have been like, whose is this? I would have politely looked around and figured it out.
Or leave it in the bin.
Leave it in the bin.
Yeah.
I certainly would not throw something in the security line at an airport. Ever.
But that sounds like a Karen move.
It's very sociopathic.
Yeah.
That sounds like.
Here's another one. Real quick. I know Judd's got to go. On the plane. So you know how, depending on the plane you're on, when you're putting your carry-on bag, your roller bag in the overhead, sometimes you have to put it sideways. Other times you have to lay it flat. Other times it's flat and then horizontal across.
Yep. Of course.
So we put our bags above. It was right above our row or whatever, and other people had their bags you put it up sideways. So anyways, we put our bags in, we sit down. There was a flight attendant who was absolutely the most Karen, if you want to use that term, that I've ever seen before. So she comes over and she opens up, they're opening up the bins to try to see if there's more room, and she goes, "Whose black bag is this? Whoever's black bag this is, you put it in the wrong way. Whose black bag is this? Bueller? Whose black bag is this?" And she's waiting for someone, and I look over and I'm like, no, it was one of our bags. Let's not. What can happen good if you raise your hand?
Right.
If she wants to reorganize, now if she says I'm booting this bag off the plane, okay, I probably need to raise the hand, right?
Right.
But what good would there be to raise your hand? With all due respect, do what you need to do.
Correct.
Do your job however you need to do your job. No need to shame me in front of 200 passengers on this plane, right? Take a deep breath.
Right. Well, and do your job. If you want to move it.
That's what I said. I'm like,
you
is it
move it.
disrespectful
If you don't want to close the thing and say this is full. It's not my job to create more room and to get up. And by the way, then you have to get up from your seat, which is very inconvenient. And
it's a window seat. I'm crawling over
on
people.
boarding. She just needs to move it, which, by the way, I've seen hundreds of flight attendants do. That's what they do.
Just do your job.
And then they just spin it or something, and that's fine. It's not like it's some.
When it was getting off the plane, it was like, all right, I'm gonna have that bag in my possession. Is this gonna be a Larry David moment where she's staring me down? That's the guy. That's the guy.
She probably found 5 more things to be pissed off about the rest of the flight.
Oh my God.
That's
all right. This is incredible. I don't know how we could ever figure this out, but we all three of us have to travel together. We got to get on an airplane together just to see what the hell happens. To see.
But the thing about it is traveling, people make it so difficult and high stress, and it really shouldn't be.
Just take a deep breath.
And just operate efficiently.
Thank you.
And that's what drives me crazy though about the conveyor belt thing. That's really not that tough.
It should also be universal.
Down.
Every airport should have this.
I agree with that. Well, that changed
ridiculous.
more and more. It used to be more so, and then it just kept changing. And then sometimes you take your shoes off. And now we've got these massive bins as opposed to the smaller bins. And the other thing is, the easiest thing in boarding, if you're on an aisle seat and you have any height at all, if someone is struggling, just get up and help them.
Yeah, I help
with their luggage.
Yes,
just get up and help them. Not because you're nice, but because it'll speed the whole thing up.
We gotta go.
Yeah.
We gotta go.
Yeah.
We gotta get going here.
But it's incredible. My last thing is, how many people are going on vacation and are miserable traveling? And it's like, if this is you, then just go home.
Yeah.
Just go back. Go sit on your couch. Relax. You're on vacation. You're acting like this is, oh my God, we got to get here and there. Grab
a cocktail, take a deep breath. All right.
Exactly.
Those are your statements and questions here on Minnesota Sports
Whose
with Mackey
bag
and
is
Judd.
this?
Bueller.
Shut up.
Bueller.
On the
Bleep.
side.
Bleep.